This is Honda's new WN7 electric motorcycle, and it has a problem. Actually, every electric motorcycle has the same problem. It's not really solely about the range or solely about the charging time. It's something else, and that something else is real estate, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Whenever I've reviewed an electric motorcycle in the past, the comments are very predictable. The range isn't good enough, charging takes too long, they're too expensive. And to be fair, none of those are wrong, but I think we're looking at the cause rather than the symptoms, and the real issue is space. An electric car has a huge area underneath the floor where manufacturers can keep adding batteries to increase the range. A motorcycle simply doesn't have that luxury. Everything has to fit between two wheels. There's only so much battery you can squeeze into a motorcycle before it becomes too heavy or too big. Until battery technology takes another big leap forward, that's always going to be one of the compromises. But here's the thing, that doesn't necessarily mean that electric motorcycles are pointless. Especially when a company like Honda decides to build one, because despite those limitations, I enjoyed riding this bike much more than I thought I would. Underneath this futuristic styling sits a 9.3 kilowatt hour battery powering a 50 kilowatt motor, making it A2 license compatible. That's around 67 horsepower in old money, backed up by 100 newton meters of torque. Honda quotes a maximum speed of 84 miles an hour and a claimed range of 87 miles. But as we all know, a spec sheet only tells you so much. What really matters is what it's like when you're out riding. Having been able to spend some proper time on the WN7, I came away pleasantly surprised. First of all, it's just good fun. If you've never ridden an electric motorcycle before, I genuinely recommend having a go, even if it's just for the experience. Strip away the fact that it's electric for a moment, and underneath you've got a really well sorted motorcycle. Handling is excellent, the shower suspension strikes a lovely balance between comfort and control, the brakes are strong, the riding position feels natural. The only thing I'm not completely sold on is the seat. It's quite narrow and quite firm. It reminds me a little bit of a motocross seat, although if you shuffle back onto the wider section it becomes a little bit more comfortable. Honda has also fitted Pirelli Diablo Rosso tyres as standard, which tells you that they're expecting people to actually enjoy riding this bike rather than simply commuting across town. And personally, I think it looks fantastic. Everywhere I've stopped, people have wandered over to ask what it is. I even took it along to a local classic and interesting car show. I wasn't quite sure how an electric motorcycle would go down, but honestly every conversation was positive. People were simply curious. They wanted to know how it worked, how far it went, and what it was like to ride. If you've got no interest in electric motorcycles, then, well, actually you probably would have given up watching this by now, but that's fine. I completely understand that. I'm a lifelong petrol head and I love the internal combustion engine as much as the next person. I don't see bikes like this replacing them. I just see them as offering a different experience, and that's exactly what this does. Twist the throttle and all 100 newton meters of torque is there instantly. No clutch, no gears, just one smooth surge forwards. It's a strange sensation the first time you experience it, but after a while it just starts to make sense. What surprised me the most wasn't actually the acceleration, it was the silence. You're suddenly aware of things you never normally notice. The wind around your helmet, the tyres on the road. Pull up at a junction out in the countryside and you can actually hear birds singing. It sounds odd, but there's something strangely relaxing about it. And when the road starts to twist, that's where this bike really starts to make sense. You've simply got instant drive every single time you open the throttle. It quietly whooshes you from one corner to the next. It's smooth, it's effortless, and before long, you stop thinking about the fact it's electric. Okay, to get going, press the button on the side, wakes up the machine, hold the lever in, press the start button, and it says ready, and we're ready to go. There are modes available on here. This is in standard. If I flick the mode button, puts me into sport, again into economy and rain, and then back round to standard, shut the throttle, and you're in there. I've been riding it mostly in standard mode, which is fine. Economy mode gives you the same kind of power, but the throttle's not as responsive, so you have to really sort of crank it and it builds power up slowly. Rain does all of that and adds a little bit more in terms of traction control, and sport just gives you everything all at once. So I'll give you a quick demo of that, because we've got a nice straight bit of country road here. So if I put it into sport mode, there we go, instantly I get a different clock. Well, we'll give you an idea of what it's like. And there's your 60, and it will do that all the way up to 83 miles an hour, 84 miles an hour, but obviously it's going to chew your battery a bit more, so let's put it into, well, let's put it into economy. And each mode has a different amount of engine braking as well. So the economy mode, you have to twist harder and it's a slower build up of power. You still get that full power, but it's a much slower delivery, and you've got much heavier regenerative braking. So as you accelerate, you can see the power that you're using here, and then as you shut off, it's regen, and you get more regen in economy mode than you do in any of the others. So if I just switch it to standard mode, you can see there's a much higher use of power, faster acceleration, not as much regen as you turn it off. On sport mode, even more of that, and more regen braking than standard, but not as much as economy. As you can see, it doesn't hang around in standard mode at all, and this is what I was saying about that delivery of power. That torque is there instantaneously, and as such, for a twisty road bike, it's brilliant because it's got all of the power exactly where you need it. Of course, the elephant in the room is still the range, and this is not a touring bike. But also, I don't think it's fair to just dismiss this as a city bike either. I wanted to use it exactly as I might use one of my own bikes. So one Sunday morning, I headed out for an hour or so riding around the country lanes with a couple of friends. Once back home, I grabbed a quick drink and then headed over to the local car show about 14 miles away. Afterwards, I deliberately took a longer route home, and when I finally parked up, I still had over 30% battery remaining. Now, that's obviously not huge mileage, but it is often the sort of riding I do on a weekend, and throughout the whole day I never once had any range anxiety. The charging options are also much better than other electric bikes I've ridden in the past. At home you can just simply plug it in overnight and it's fully recharged in around 5.5 hours. But more importantly, Honda has fitted a CCS2 connector. That means you can also use DC rapid chargers. Plug it into any one of those and you can go from 20 to 80% in around 30 minutes. That's enough time for a coffee and something to eat before you're back on the road. So there you go, less than half an hour, less than a fiver, and I've gone from just over 20% to 80%. But that's one of the things about charging an electric bike. People seem to go, well, you know, you run it down from 100% to, you know, 20%. It's a bit like a car. You don't necessarily have to run it from completely full to completely empty. It's probably a habit that we've got into over the years of doing that. I know I generally only fill up when I know that I haven't got enough range to get to where I'm going in my car, and it's largely the same for this. If you grab the opportunity to just park up and get a charge into it as you go along. So if you are out riding and you decide, actually I want a sandwich or I want a cup of coffee or whatever it is, if you've got a charging point nearby, bang it in, even for 10 or 15 minutes. It just gives you that little bit of lift of range, and you just do, you know, little and often as and when you need it. And given the network for chargers has over the years increased, and using things like ZapMap gives you the opportunity to be able to spot where they are, what kind of chargers they are, if they're being used, all that sort of stuff. That's a handy little app to have. But overall it's far less aggravation than I thought it would be, and you just really have to plan. Whoa, he wasn't looking. That was my postman. I'll have to have a word with him. Obviously it takes longer to charge this than it does to fill a bike, and there's more thought involved, but it's not that onerous. Nothing's going to beat the speed and practicality of filling up a petrol bike. But perhaps when every single petrol forecourt also has one or two fast chargers, that problem largely goes away. All it is the time, and that is improving as the technology improves. That 20% goes into turtle mode. It appears that the turtle mode that's flashing there just seems to bring everything down to economy mode, and I don't think I can actually, I can select sport. Let's see what it does. In sport, I think it maybe just reduces your top speed, but not to a point that it becomes dangerous. Yeah, 50 miles an hour, what it does. So you can still use all the modes that you would normally do, it just cuts your speed to 50 miles an hour. And now I'm getting lots of warnings saying, charge me up. Of course, charging it is only one part of the ownership experience. One thing that is often overlooked is the ongoing maintenance. Think about everything you normally have to service on a petrol bike. Engine oil, filters, spark plugs, valve clearances, all of that. None of that exists here. The WN7 is also belt driven, so there's no chain to clean, lubricate or adjust either. It's clean, quiet and virtually maintenance free. In reality, with a bike like this, all you've got to worry about really are things like tyres, brakes and ongoing safety checks. Because of the lack of those mechanical parts, servicing costs on these should be considerably cheaper than its petrol equivalent. It's one of those advantages that doesn't grab the headlines like range or charging times, but if you're planning to own a bike for several years, it could make a real difference to the overall cost of ownership. Honda say that they've built the WN7 as a gateway into the world of electric motorcycling. And I can see that if you're somebody that commutes every day, this makes a huge amount of sense. If you're somebody who enjoys new technology, it will definitely appeal. And if you simply fancy owning something a little bit different, you'll probably love it. But honestly, I think it's even simpler than that. This is for somebody who's open-minded enough to try something different. So, would I swap the Africa Twin for one of these? Well, no, but I think that's the wrong comparison. The better question is, would I have one of these sat alongside other bikes in my garage? And the answer to that is definitely yes. Because despite all of the debate surrounding electric motorcycles, Honda has managed to build something that still feels like a proper motorcycle. It still makes you want to head out for a ride, it still puts a smile on your face, it just goes about it in a completely different way. At £12,999, it certainly isn't cheap, but compared to its rivals, this is pretty aggressively priced. More importantly, this feels like a proper Honda. Well engineered, easy to ride and clearly designed by people who understand motorcycles first. Is it perfect? No. Battery technology still has a long way to go, but as Honda's first serious step into electric motorcycling, I think they've made a remarkably convincing start. And if this is where Honda are starting, then I'm genuinely interested to see where they go next.